On April 6th, something in the architecture of your life is being cut. Not broken, cut. The North Node in Aries makes an exact activation that has been building since the end of last year, lit up by the Sun and Chiron in a configuration that the sky does not arrange casually. If you have been feeling a particular kind of restlessness lately, something beneath restlessness, something older and more insistent, then you have already been feeling this coming. The sky does not announce what it is about to do in headlines. It announces it in your body. It announces it in the quality of your 3 a.m. wakefulness, in the flat feeling that arrives after conversations that used to sustain you, in the way you've been looking at your own life lately, the way you look at a house you used to recognize, and suddenly, in some essential way, no longer do. That feeling is not confusion. That feeling is the point. Because what is happening on April 6th is not just an astrological transit, it is a severance. And the thing being severed is your loyalty to a version of yourself that has already outgrown you. You have been faithful to it longer than it deserved. You've been keeping the lights on in rooms you stopped living in years ago, and part of you has known this for a while now. You have known it in the way you know things you are not yet ready to do anything about. But knowing something and being ready to let it go are not the same thing. This transit is the moment the gap between those two closes. Stay with me through this, because the way this North Node alignment is configured, a convergence involving the Sun and Chiron, explains precisely why this moment is landing with the force it's landing with. I will get to that. But first, I need to make sure you understand that what you have been feeling in these past weeks is not you losing ground. It is not ingratitude. It is not you coming apart. It is the sound of something true beginning finally to insist on being heard. Right now, as these words reach you, thousands of people are moving through the same quiet unraveling. In different cities, different houses, different versions of the same Tuesday, people who have built real lives, loved real people, honored real commitments, and who are feeling something they cannot quite name, pressing up from beneath all of it. You are not alone in this moment. What is moving through the collective right now is moving through all of us, and the fact that you found your way to this video, to this specific conversation, on this specific day, tells me something about where you are and what you are ready for. If this is already landing for you, if the words in the first few minutes have found something you've been carrying, leave a comment below right now. I am done maintaining what I have outgrown. Write that, even if no one sees it but you, especially if you've been quietly knowing this for longer than you've admitted to anyone. The act of saying it, even in this form, is not nothing. It is the beginning of the North Node's work. Stick with me. Because what we're about to walk through together is not just an explanation of what is happening in the sky. It is a map of what has been happening in you. There is a specific quality to the exhaustion you have been carrying lately, and I want to name it with precision, because it is not the kind that sleep fixes. It is the exhaustion of effort applied in the wrong direction for a very long time. You have been working, not lazily, not half-heartedly, genuinely, sincerely working, at a relationship, at a role, at a way of being in your life that you constructed carefully over years, because it was the right construction for who you were then and what you needed then. The work has come from a real place. You have given real things. The investment has been authentic, but somewhere in the last months, or if you allow yourself to be fully honest, the last several years, you have begun to notice that the effort you pour in is not coming back in any form you can actually use. Not reciprocity, not recognition, not the sense that the shape of your days belongs to you in any meaningful way. You pour it in, and it disappears into the maintenance of structures that were built for a version of your life that has already quietly passed. And you pour more in because that is what you know how to do. And the disappearing continues. And somewhere underneath all of that, held below the patience and the professionalism and the genuinely loving parts of you, is a feeling you have been working very hard not to examine too closely. That feeling is anger. Not the dramatic kind, not the kind that announces itself with heat and volume. The quiet, managed kind, the kind that has been translated so thoroughly into patience over so many years that you have almost forgotten it started as anger. It shows up in the moment, right after you have agreed to something you did not actually want to agree to, and then rearranged your face into the expression of someone who is perfectly fine. It shows up in the middle of a conversation you have already had 40 times, realizing you are going to have it 40 more times, and the outcome will be the same, and feeling something you immediately redirect into a more acceptable emotion. It shows up at night, specifically in that hour between 1 and 3, when the rationalizations and the busyness and the daily performance of fineness finally run quiet, and what remains in the stillness is just the undecorated truth. You have been making yourself smaller than you are. Not occasionally, not in a few isolated situations, structurally. As a way of existing in your relationships, in your work, in your own interior life. And the exhaustion from this is not just emotional. Your body knows. There is a weight that settles into the chest and the shoulders and the back of the neck. Not pain exactly, not injury, more like a chronic density, the way muscles feel after years of holding a posture that was never quite natural. You know the posture, I mean, the one where you are slightly less direct than you actually think, slightly more accommodating than you actually feel, slightly more patient than the situation genuinely warrants. The one where your needs are always the ones that can be addressed later, after everyone else's have been handled, after the dust has settled, after there is a better moment. And the better moment never quite arrives, and later accumulates into years, and you have built a life that is deeply familiar and slightly the wrong size. You have been holding that shape so long, it has started to feel like your actual shape. It has started to feel like identity, like character, the generous one, the reliable one, the one who holds things together, rather than the contraction you adopted so that everything around you could stay intact. Your sleep tells the story clearly. Something in the deep layers is moving and it is not giving you clean rest. You wake in the night, not always dramatically, sometimes just a soft surfacing into semi-consciousness, and for a moment, before the day's structure reimposed itself and the obligations of the morning called everything back into order, you felt something you couldn't quite catch. A direction, a grief, a flash of something you wanted that you have not allowed yourself to fully name. And then it slipped back below the surface, and you moved through the day carrying it like a stone in a pocket, heavy enough to notice if you pressed your hand against it, but easy enough to ignore if you kept moving quickly enough. The dreams, when you can remember them, have a particular quality of displacement. Old places, people from chapters of your life that closed years ago, versions of yourself that existed before the decisions that shape the life you are currently living. The psyche runs an inventory during transits like this one. It goes through what has been stored in the deep places and asks with a kind of careful thoroughness, what here still belongs to the present? What has been held in storage out of loyalty to a past that is no longer active? What can be released? Your relationships, the closest ones, the ones you have built your life around, have been showing their underlying structure in a new and sometimes uncomfortable way. Not because anything has explicitly changed in those relationships necessarily, but because something has changed in you. Your tolerance for imbalance has shifted. The things you used to absorb automatically, without naming them, without cataloging them, have started to have names. And the naming feels like betrayal, because you love these people, and you have built genuine things with them, and the fact that a pattern no longer serves you does not mean the relationship was wrong or the love was false. But your body knows, with a clarity that the mind has been trying to manage, the difference between what feeds you and what drains you. And it has been trying to tell you, in every way it knows how, that the ratio has shifted. Socially, more broadly, you have felt a new kind of fatigue in contexts that used to feel natural. The effort of maintaining connection in environments where you no longer quite belong, not because the people are bad, but because you have grown past the version of yourself that found them sustaining. The way certain conversations feel like going through motions you memorized years ago. The strange flatness that follows interactions that used to feel meaningful. The sense of performing a version of yourself in social contexts that is true, but not entirely true, not the whole thing. The pattern shows up around money and worth too, and it deserves to be named, because it is not separate from the emotional and relational dimensions. It is the same thing expressing itself through a different medium. The way you have been pricing your work. The way you accept what is offered, even when you know it is less than you have earned. The way asking for the full amount, whether in a negotiation, in a relationship, in a statement of your own needs, feels somehow inappropriate, somehow like pushing, like asking for more than your share. This is not a practical problem. It is not about your understanding of market rates or negotiation tactics. It is the same learned pattern of self-reduction showing up in the language of money. The same quiet agreement that your worth is the negotiable variable in any equation. The North Node in Aries, activated by the Sun and Chiron in this exact configuration, is targeting this specific habit of deferring to what others decide you are worth rather than declaring it yourself. What ties all of these threads together? The exhaustion, the managed anger, the relational fatigue, the disrupted sleep, the material self-deprecation is this. You have organized your entire interior life around what is expected of you rather than what is true for you. The expectation has become so internalized that it no longer feels external. It feels like you. And the deepest confusion this transit is here to untangle is the one between your actual values and the performance of values that you adopted because they were required of you before you had the power to choose. You are not who you have been performing. You are larger than the version of yourself that has been on duty all this time. And the transit that will make this undeniable begins on April 5th and reaches its exact point on April 6th, which is precisely what I want to explain next. The North Node is not a planet in the traditional sense. It is a mathematical point, the intersection of the Moon's orbital path with the ecliptic, and what it represents in the astrological tradition is the direction of evolutionary pull, the soul's assignment in this lifetime, the place the chart is leaning toward, the way a plant leans toward light even in the dark. Its counterpart, the South Node, directly opposite in the zodiac, represents what is ingrained and native and mastered, not wrong, but habitual. The place the soul returns to automatically without deciding to, because it is deeply familiar. Since July of 2023, the North Node has been in Aries. The South Node has been in Libra. This nodal axis has been working through the collective continuously since then. And if you have been paying attention to your own life during these past almost 2 years, you may have already felt its central question accumulating force beneath the surface of your days. Where have you confused harmony with self-abandonment? Where have you called something peace when it was, more accurately, appeasement? Where have you given yourself away? Your time, your opinions, your desires, your energy, your full-sized presence, in the name of keeping things intact, and told yourself it was virtue when it was, at its deepest root, fear. Libra is not a difficult or problematic sign. Let me be clear about that. Libra carries genuine and irreplaceable gifts, the capacity for deep relationship, for the kind of fairness that requires actually seeing other people, for holding complexity without collapsing it into premature resolution, for creating beauty from the careful balancing of opposites. These are real gifts. They are needed in the world. But the South Node in Libra has a shadow, and this shadow is one that many people in the 45-plus range, people who have spent decades in caretaking roles in marriages and families and professions that required prioritizing others first, know from the inside with a painful specificity. The shadow is this: the compulsive management of other people's experience at the expense of your own truth. The reflexive smoothing over, so practiced it happens before you even consciously register that there was something to smooth. The yes that follows automatically, before you have had even a single breath of a moment to consult what you actually want. The constant, invisible, exhausting monitoring of the emotional weather in the room and adjusting your own behavior accordingly. The capacity for empathy that has been so overextended, it has become a mechanism of self-erasure, so that you are almost always attending to someone else's interior experience with greater care than you attend to your own. That is the karma being cut on April 6th. That precise thing. Now here is what is specific and significant about this particular moment. The North Node in Aries is being activated by 3 simultaneous presences. The Sun moved into Aries at the spring equinox. The sun, which represents conscious identity, the sense of self you move through your days by, the light by which you understand your own life. Chiron, the body of the wounded healer, has been moving through Aries for several years and is currently positioned at a degree that directly engages the nodal axis, and the North Node itself, exact on April 6th, pulls all of this together into a configuration that the sky does not arrange casually. Think of Chiron for a moment. In the mythology, Chiron was a centaur wounded by a poisoned arrow he could not heal, struck in the one place his considerable wisdom could not reach. He became the greatest healer of his age precisely because of this wound. Not in spite of it, because of it. What he could not cure in himself, he understood at a depth that allowed him to hold the healing of others. The wound was the source. Chiron in Aries speaks to a wound around self-initiation, around the right to begin, around the authority to say, this is what I want, this is the direction I am moving, this is my life, and I am the one making the decisions about it. For many people, especially those who were the responsible one, the caretaking one, the one who made sure everyone else's needs were handled before attending to their own, this wound has an early origin. There was a moment, or a series of moments, when the unedited self was too much for the room, when desire was too big, or opinions were too sharp, or the full-sized presence was somehow inconvenient for the systems that surrounded it. And the lesson absorbed in that moment, absorbed not as a choice but as a survival strategy, was: make yourself smaller. Edit before speaking. Want less conspicuously. Take up space in ways that don't require anyone else to move. The Sun conjunct Chiron conjunct the North Node in Aries on April 6th means this: your conscious self, your identity, your sense of who you are in the world is standing directly at the crossing point between the wound and the healing, between the learned smallness and the reclaimed full size, between the direction you have been moving by habit and the direction you are being called toward by something older and truer than habit. You are not watching this transit from a distance. You are the transit. Think again of the house, the one you've been maintaining. You moved into it at a time when the rooms it contained were right for you. The relationships were alive. The role was generative. The version of your life it held was the life you were actively building. You've kept the lights on carefully, consistently, with genuine care. You've repaired what broke. You've kept the furniture arranged the way everyone expected it to be arranged, and the routines intact, and the whole thing running, because that's what a responsible person does. That's what a person who loves well does. You maintain the things that matter to them, but you stopped living in some of the rooms, gradually, quietly, in a process so slow it didn't announce itself. The rooms that contain your actual desires, your uncurated opinions, your full-sized ambitions, your unedited self. You stopped going into them. Not because you forgot they were there, because going into them required a kind of conversation you were not yet ready to have. With yourself. With the people in your life. With the structures you had spent years building and that other people depended on in ways that made their dissolution feel like cruelty. The North Node in Aries, activated by the Sun and the wounded healer on April 6th, is not asking you to tear the house down. It is asking you to stop pretending you still live in all of it, to stop maintaining rooms you've evacuated, to unlock the doors of the ones you've been avoiding, and to walk back in. That is the work this transit is asking for. Simple in the telling, enormous in the doing. Let me stay with you inside what is actually happening here, because the breaking open that this transit initiates deserves more space than most scripts give it. It deserves to be named precisely, without rushing toward resolution, without managing the difficulty into something more comfortable than it actually is. When a pattern has been operating for decades, it does not feel like a pattern. It feels like character. It feels like who you are in the most fundamental sense: your generosity, your patience, your capacity for love, your reliability. The South Node in Libra, reinforced by everything you lived through in the family system you were born into, in the relationships you built as a young adult, in the roles you have inhabited across your life, has been so thoroughly integrated that it no longer announces itself as a strategy. It announces itself as you. And the idea of releasing it, feels not just unfamiliar but genuinely threatening. It feels like losing the thing that makes you good. This is the first truth that must be named clearly. Releasing the compulsion to maintain peace at your own expense is not the same as becoming someone who doesn't care about other people. It is not becoming selfish. The 45-plus person has usually spent enough years being accused, explicitly or by implication, of selfishness for having any needs at all, for having opinions that inconvenience others, for wanting things that require other people to adjust, that the word has taken on a toxicity it was never meant to carry. What is emerging in this transit is not selfishness, it is self. Those are not the same word. Selfishness is the hoarding of care, the refusal to consider impact. Self is the recognition that you are also someone who exists, who matters, who deserves to be included in the accounting. The shell that is cracking on April 6th is not you. Let me say that again, because the fear underneath the resistance is precisely this, that what is being asked to go is the good part, the loving part, the part that has made you someone worth knowing. The shell is not you. The shell is the managed, accommodating, perpetually available performance of self that you adopted because at some point in your history it was genuinely required and then continued through inertia, through fear, through genuine love, through the intricate obligations of a real life. Long after the requiring was over, what is inside that shell is not a stranger. It is not a worse version of you, not a more selfish or destructive version. It is the version that existed before the editing began, older than your adaptations, more native than your strategies, the one who had opinions without immediately translating them into something more palatable, the one who wanted things without simultaneously calculating whether the wanting was appropriate, the one who took up space without running a cost-benefit analysis on the space they occupied. This is what is rising now. And for someone who has lived enough life to have genuine history, it does not rise cleanly. It rises tangled with grief. Because to look clearly at the degree to which you have been living in a contracted version of yourself is to look at everything the contraction cost you. The directions not taken because they required someone else's permission. The desires set aside because the timing was never right and the timing never became right. The years of yes when the truth was no, and the life built on top of that foundation, and the realization, which arrives gradually and then all at once, that the foundation has been slightly uncomfortable all along, and you have been so busy managing the discomfort that you never stop to ask whether the foundation itself could be changed. Let yourself feel that grief, not as a permanent address, this transit is too forward-moving for prolonged residence, but as a real and necessary stopping point. Something true was lost in the years of over-accommodation. The grief is not weakness, it is receipt. It is you finally allowing yourself to feel the actual weight of what it cost. What is surfacing now is old. The instinct when old material rises, old anger, old grief, old longing, is to treat it as regression, as proof you haven't healed as much as you thought. But that reading is wrong. This material has been in storage, preserved in precisely the condition it was in when it went under, waiting for the moment when you could receive it. The 28-year-old version of you could not have held what is coming up now. The person you are now, with the earned perspective, the real losses, the accumulated self-knowledge of someone who has done actual inner work across actual decades, can hold it. The material has been waiting for you to become capable of meeting it with something other than suppression. Receive it accordingly. Underneath all of these specific experiences, the managed anger, the relational fatigue, the exhaustion of the wrong-shaped effort, there is a single pattern. You will recognize it because it has been running through your life in different forms across different contexts. The underlying shape has been consistent. You have made your own needs, your own full-sized presence, conditional on everyone else's comfort first. You have been waiting for permission, for the right moment, for circumstances to align in a way that makes your own wholeness feel justified, rather than simply claiming it. The permission almost never comes in the form you need, because it cannot come from the outside. It was never the outside world's to grant. It is yours. It has always been yours. This pattern has roots. For most people in the 45-plus range, they extend into the original family system. the role you occupied before you were old enough to choose it, the one who kept the peace, the one whose needs were always the negotiable variable, the one who learned that making yourself fully visible risked making everyone else uncomfortable, and that the invisible path was the smoothest one. That learning was adaptive. In the context where it was acquired, it may have been genuinely necessary. But what keeps you safe at 8 years old limits your freedom at 52. The strategy outlived the situation it was designed for by decades. And the deepest patterns are not changed by insight alone. They are changed by action. By doing, repeatedly and with intention, the exact thing the pattern has trained you not to do. This transit is asking for that action. And now you are in the in-between. This is the part of the journey that is the most difficult to inhabit and the least frequently named with any accuracy. The in-between is the disorienting space of being neither fully who you were nor fully who you are becoming. The old identity has started to loosen. You can feel it in the way the old behaviors have started to feel slightly wrong, the way old conversations have started to feel like costumes rather than skin. But the new identity has not yet taken its full shape. You cannot see what it looks like when it's complete. You can feel the direction but not the destination. For someone aged 45 to 65, this in-between is not abstract. It is Tuesday morning, sitting in your kitchen with the house quiet, in the particular way it gets when the people you organized your life around are no longer filling it the same way. The in-between is the moment in a long relationship when you realize you are both different people from the ones who made the original promises, and the question of whether the new people still fit together the same way is one you have been carefully not asking. The in-between is the career that has reached its natural end, but where the shape of what comes next has not yet clarified. There is no montage. There is just Tuesday after Tuesday, and the slow accumulation of small choices made differently, and the gradual realization that you are becoming someone slightly more honest about what you want. What I want you to hear is this. The fact that you cannot see the destination clearly is not a sign that the direction is wrong. It is the nature of the North Node. The North Node never gives you the destination, it gives you the direction. A direction and a destination are not the same thing. One you plan toward and arrive at. The other you orient toward and walk. The North Node in Aries is asking you to walk. Not to have the whole thing planned and certain and safe, to take the next step in the direction of your own truth, in the specific context of your actual daily life. And underneath all of the dissolution, something is stabilizing. Something genuinely new is forming in the deep places. The dissolution is so much more present to the senses than the formation. It is right there in the disrupted sleep and the exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix. The formation is quieter, below the level of sensation. You may not be able to see it yet, but if you have been paying attention, you may have caught a glimpse, a moment in the last few weeks where something that felt impossible 3 months ago felt, suddenly and without fanfare, like the only possible thing. A direction that had been obscured beginning to clarify at the edges, not yet fully visible, but no longer completely invisible. This is the new steadiness arriving. It is different from the old steadiness, from the certainty that came from things being held rigidly in place through vigilance and management. The old steadiness required constant effort to maintain. The new kind does not. It has the quality of something rooted rather than constructed. It is the knowledge that comes not from having things under control, but from having looked at what is true and found that looking did not destroy you. You are more durable than you have been living as though you are. Aries does not survive by accommodating everything around it. It survives by knowing what it is and moving from that knowing. What this transit is offering is not the reckless version of Aries that knocks everything over without care. It is the mature Chiron integrated version, the one that has healed the wound enough to move from intention rather than reactivity. The one that knows the difference between self-assertion and aggression, between claiming space and taking it from someone else. The house is being reclaimed, not all at once, one room at a time, one door unlocked, one honest conversation deferred because you were not sure you would survive the aftermath, one desire named out loud that you've been keeping quiet because the quiet felt safer, and then another, and then eventually, Not today, but in the accumulated motion of choices made differently. You will look back and realize you are not standing in the house you used to maintain. You are living in the one that was always meant to be yours. Now let me give you something specific. 3 practices designed for this exact transit, this exact configuration. Not generic spiritual guidance, but things that arise directly from what the North Node in Aries, activated by the Sun and Chiron, is specifically opening. The first practice is what I want to call the maintenance audit. This is not a thinking exercise, it is a felt one, and that distinction matters. Set aside 15 uninterrupted minutes. Say it in a space where you feel relatively free from obligation. Not the kitchen, not the desk, not anywhere that activates the performing self. And let yourself move through the major structures of your current life, your primary relationships, your work or sense of purpose, your daily routines, your social commitments, the stories you tell about who you are and why your life looks the way it looks. For each one, bring it into focus and ask, not as an intellectual exercise but as a physical sensation, this single question: does this feel alive, or does it feel like maintenance? Not is this relationship good, or is this work meaningful in the abstract? Not should I value this, but when I imagine continuing this arrangement for the next 5 years, does something in my body expand slightly or contract slightly? The body knows the difference. It has known it for longer than you've been willing to consciously acknowledge. The resistance that will arise here is significant, and I want to name it directly, because this audience has sophisticated enough inner lives that vague resistance will be immediately dressed in respectable clothing. It will arrive as loyalty, but I love this person. As responsibility, but people depend on this. As sunk cost, but I have invested so much. As fear wearing the face of wisdom, but change is always risky. All of these voices are real. They are not nothing. They deserve to be heard, but they are not the same as the question of whether something is alive. A relationship can be loving and also exhausting in a way that is no longer generative. A role can be responsible and also past its natural end. Hearing those voices and still continuing the audit is not betrayal, it is clarity. And clarity is the primary gift of the North Node in Aries. The second practice is what I want to call setting the number first. The South Node in Libra has been running a quiet, persistent algorithm in the background of your decision-making. Determine what others will find acceptable, and then calibrate your asking accordingly. This runs through professional negotiations, through relational needs, through the way you pace your requests, through your sense of your own value in any context where value is being assigned. The algorithm is so practiced, it operates below the threshold of conscious choice. You do not decide to undervalue yourself. You simply arrive at an estimate that has already been adjusted for palatability. The North Node in Aries asks you to reverse the sequence. To determine the number, the rate, the boundary, the need, the standard you actually require, from the inside, before you have consulted anyone else's likely response to it, and then to hold it. Pick one concrete instance this week. Not a general intention towards self-worth, a specific thing. A conversation you have been deferring because you weren't sure you deserved the outcome you want. A rate you have been charging that you know, privately, is less than the work is worth. A need in a relationship that you have been waiting for the right moment to name, and the right moment keeps not arriving. Name it. Write it down. And then, this is the part that the transit's energy is specifically powered to support right now. Have the conversation. Make the ask, set the number first this week, while the Sun and the North Node are still conjunct in Aries, while the activation is live. The window is open right now in a way it will not be for another 18 years when the North Node next moves through Aries. Use it. The third practice is one act of unedited expression. The conditioning of the South Node in Libra runs most visibly through language. The reflexive softening of opinions, the automatic qualifier inserted before any statement of personal preference. The checking, so habitual it feels like courtesy, of whether what you're about to say will be well received before you say it. The way your sentences sometimes arrive at their destination by a route that was designed to avoid offense rather than the most direct path between what you think and the words you use to express it. This week, in at least one context, a conversation, a piece of writing, a journal entry, a message to someone in your life. Say the thing exactly as it is, without the qualifier, without the softening, without the advanced survey of how it will land. Not aggressively, not in a way designed to wound, but without the editing. Let the sentence arrive where it is actually going. Notice the fear that comes up when you do this. Name it specifically if you can. It will be old fear. It will have the texture of something from much earlier in your life, from the original moment you learned that your unedited self was more than the room could hold. Notice it, feel it, and then say the thing anyway. This is not the elimination of care for others. It is the addition of yourself to the list of people you care about. The North Node in Aries does not ask you to stop considering others. It asks you to stop considering others to the exclusion of yourself. Before the closing, I want to speak directly to 3 placements that this nodal activation is hitting with particular precision and force. If your Sun, Moon, or Rising is in Libra, the South Node is currently sitting exactly on your axis. This transit has felt more personal for you than almost anything in recent years because what is being asked to release is not abstract. It is the quality you have always considered your most defining gift. Your capacity for harmony, for fairness, for holding multiple perspectives without forcing resolution, for creating connection across difference. The invitation here is not to give that up. It would not serve the world for Libra to become something else. The invitation is to include yourself in the equation. You have been so devoted to everyone else's experience of things being balanced that you have consistently left your own weight off one side of the scales. The scales are not actually balanced. They have not been for a long time. This transit is asking you to put your own weight down, not to tip the scales toward yourself at everyone else's expense, but to stop pretending you are the scale rather than one of the things being weighed. If your Sun, Moon, or Rising is in Aries, the North Node is on your axis, which means the direction this transit is calling for is, in the most immediate sense, you. But Chiron's presence complicates this in an important way. Aries energy that is not integrated through the wound tends toward reaction, toward the kind of forward movement that is actually flight, the kind of self-assertion that is actually anger looking for a direction. The invitation for you in this transit is not simply to act. You know how to act. It is to act from the healed place, from genuine choice rather than the momentum of pain, from the wound addressed rather than the wound bypassed. The bravery this transit is specifically asking of you is quieter than the bravery you are accustomed to. It is the bravery of moving toward yourself without needing to make anyone else wrong in the process. That is harder for Aries than it sounds. If your Sun, Moon, or Rising is in Cancer or Capricorn, you sit at the square point of the current nodal axis. This means the activation of April 6th creates a dynamic tension that requires you to find a new integration between the personal and the structural, between home and world, between what you feel and what you build. For Cancer, the specific invitation is to stop making your own emotional reality smaller in order to maintain the stability of the systems and people around you. You have been the emotional weather maker for others while managing your own weather in private. That arrangement is unsustainable, and this transit is making the cost of it visible. For Capricorn, the invitation is to stop treating the interior life as what you will attend to when the external achievements are complete. The external achievements will never be complete in the way you have defined completion. The interior life is not a reward for finished work. It is the source of the work. Both of you have been running a contracted version of yourselves. April 6th is the moment the contraction becomes too uncomfortable to continue ignoring. On April 5th, the sky began to move into this alignment. By April 6th, it had arrived at its exact point, and you were here. Not as someone passively receiving what the planets were sending, but as someone who, in the middle of the most exhausting and confusing kind of season, the kind where the old map has stopped matching the territory and the new map has not yet been drawn, found their way to a question worth asking. Who would I be if I stopped maintaining what I have already outgrown? That question is the whole of what this North Node activation offers. Not an answer. Answers arrive slowly, through the accumulation of choices made differently over time. But a question, precise and sharp and honest enough to cut through the calcification of decades. You have been keeping the lights on in rooms you stopped living in. That is not a condemnation. It is a description of what love does when it doesn't have better information. It maintains. It tends. It shows up reliably for things that were once alive and doesn't always know how to discern when the life has moved elsewhere. You have been faithful. You have been remarkably, exhaustingly faithful. But faithfulness to the past, when the past is complete, is not virtue. It is a kind of grief that has been misdirected at the wrong object. The grief belongs to the completed thing. The energy, the attention, the care, the enormous capacity you carry belongs to what is actually alive, to the rooms you have not yet opened, to the desires you have not yet voiced, to the version of yourself that has been waiting, with a patience more durable than yours, for you to come back to it. What remains when you stop holding everything in place is what was always truly yours. Relationships that are genuinely alive do not require the effort of maintenance that completed ones do. Work that is truly yours does not feel like the wrong direction. The life that fits is the one you can inhabit fully, without contraction, without making yourself slightly less than you are. You have stayed for the whole of this. For 40 minutes, you have been paying attention to your own interior life, not as an indulgence, not as an escape from the real demands on your time, but as one of the most necessary acts available to a person in the middle of significant change. I want you to know that. The act of sustained attention to your own truth, at this point in your life after the decades of attending to everyone else's, that is not nothing. That is in fact exactly what the North Node in Aries is asking of you. You are already doing it. Leave a comment below if you are ready to name where you are. I am walking toward what is mine. That is where you are. You have arrived at the crossing point and you have chosen the direction. Let that be said somewhere, even here. Share this with someone who is also in the middle of an in-between. They cannot quite name. Subscribe if you want to keep navigating this territory with company. Leave a like if something in the last 40 minutes found the thing it was looking for. The lights in the unmaintained rooms can go off now. You do not live there anymore. Walk toward the ones that are yours.